Dean, Chief Bejarano, please. I've been here for hours waiting and waiting.
We'll have a different time.
We're going to call a meeting of the Board of State and Community Corrections to order, and I welcome all of the board members, and I would ask for a roll call, please.
Ms. Penner,
Present.
Mr. Kernan.
Here.
Mr. Villarosa. Mr. Groden.
Here.
Mr. Dean.
Here.
Ms. Perez. Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Artola.
Here.
Judge Garrett.
Here.
Mr. Bejarano.
Here.
Mr. Budnick.
Here.
Mr. Steinhardt.
Here.
Ms. Turner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, and just for information's sake, board member Leticia Perez has jury duty today, and so we told her that we thought she should stay there and take care of her civil obligation to Kern County in the Superior Court. I'm going to give you a few little information items. I first would like to announce the retirement, or the pending retirement of Chief Bejarano, one of our board members. That's good news and bad news. The good news for him is that his retirement is going to give him lots of time to continue to serve the board in his retirement.
Looking forward to that.
It's always about what's good for us here at the BSCC. I had a long talk with the chief, who has had a very distinguished long career and is ready to pay close attention to family matters now. I have a sense that the BSCC won't be his only obligation that is a hanger-on. Or anything you'd like to say, Chief? Except thank you to the chair for allowing you to serve.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to serve. It really has been an honor, probably the highlight of my 35-year career, but once again, humbled that I've been doing something that I love for 35 years, so looking forward to more work with the BSCC.
Thank you, and just a little more information. When I reached out to the governor's office and said that the chief is going to retire, they insisted that he stays on in his retirement and continues in this role. So a lot of admiration around the system for you. And now, you know, while Chief Bejarano was good news and bad news, this is bad news and bad news. We're going to be losing one of our staff members. I would ask Maggie Work to please stand.
Oh.
Let's clap too loud.
As you can see, she's lost all decorum in her departure. Maggie has served the BSCC extraordinarily, and her professionalism has served us in every task assignment she's been given. I was thinking on the way here about her departure, and let me tell you, her departure is imminent. She is leaving this meeting and driving to Boise. Or do you want your whereabouts unknown? Are you still in the witness protection? Yeah. She's going into the witness protection program from the BSCC.
In Boise.
Yeah, in Boise. I think many of us are saddened by your departure, certainly because you add every day your intellectual property to everything we do. But beyond that, your steadfast commitment to us, your personal style, and I won't share much of that with you because it's certainly not open for meeting edification. Yes, we can do that. But I'm sad to see you go. Maggie actually retired once before. We begged her to come back. We promoted her so she'd stay a little longer. And she was pretty adamant this time. When you say, Katie, about leaving? She means it. She's so serious her suitcases are in the parking lot. I think many of us would like to share some remarks with you now. So I'm going to actually, I think Sheriff Dean has something he'd like to do.
I actually have a little thing for you.
Oh.
So at the 844 ESC meeting last week, those of us that have been victimized by Maggie for many years, for those of you, I don't raise your hand if you've ever had a facility inspected by Maggie, but one of the things we came to appreciate was your commitment to excellence. You forced everyone to raise the bar higher because you held steadfast, but you had an incredible common sense, logical approach. You lived it, you're reasonable, but you didn't let anything slide, and you put it in writing, and you held us to it, and I think that was good for the people we had in custody and for us. So I'm really grateful. You're great to work with. I love your candor. I'm really gonna miss you and what you do. And I think we'll all, everyone will struggle a little bit at BSCC and getting things done because you just have a wonderful ability and you just do the right thing for the right reason. So thank you.
Yeah. Katie, anybody else like to make a remark about Maggie?
I do. Really just adding on to what Chair Penner and Sheriff Dean have said. Maggie has just made such enormous contributions to this organization. She's been here 15 years. And when she tried to retire 2 years ago, we asked her to please stay on and help us out. And I know Sheriff Groudon joins in thanking Maggie for her role on the SB 863 ESC last year. She is all these things that everyone has said, so I don't need to take too much time other than to say thank you and we'll miss you. And everybody keep an eye out for the U-Haul trailer. It's going to be here right around noon.
Moving on to just the depth and breadth of this meeting. There is a lot that has been accomplished between our last meeting and now, including some training accomplishments, regs that we have worked on, Prop 47, the lead, BSC, Burn Jag, and 844, just to mention a few. I have spent a great deal of time on the road since our last meeting, as recent as last night in San Luis with CAPIA, probation administrators in the institutions, and we started the week in Kings County at a groundbreaking for AB 1022 facility. So lots and lots of movement in the state. And it's also rumored there was a election recently, and we have some rollout of following that in terms of adapting to new laws and many other things that are going on. I just personally want to congratulate the staff of the BSCC for being nimble, hardworking, and accomplished as we do all this. And I think as the meeting rolls forward, you too will be impressed with the work they have done. So, and I should have acknowledged our legal counsel's in. I try to ignore him because he corrects me so very, very often, but Aaron McGuire is with us today and will be keeping us all on track and in line. I now reach out to Katie to do the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members. I want to begin with just a little bit more of additional thanks to the BSCC staff. When we started our meeting in September, the board appropriately and understandably noted some concern that several reports for that meeting had been posted just the night before. We told you we would fix it, and we did. As promised, the reports were out timely. Some things came a little bit later, but that's because there were ESC meetings going on as recently as last week. Really, really, really grateful to the staff, especially Tracy Cohn and Adam Lynn, who absolutely helped us step up our game. This is the kind of staffing and timeliness that this board should expect, and our interested stakeholders as well are entitled to timely materials. So we will keep that up. Also, in terms of Maggie's departure, I wanted to introduce to the board John Prince, who's here. John has been with the BSCC for a little under a year, but has a lot of experience in state service, including CDCR. He is going to be our acting division director over the county facilities construction division. I want to thank John for being willing to step into that role. There will be an open recruitment, but in the interim, John is our deputy director over facilities. So just wanted you to have the chance to say hello to him. And then in other updates, in your binder, there's a legislative report under the information items. It's just before tab A in the binder. This has the updates on all of the governor's actions of the bills we were interested in 2016. And of particular note is SB 1157, which was Senator Mitchell's bill having to do with visitation in local jail facilities. That bill sought to prohibit a video-only approach, as you will remember, and the governor vetoed the bill and directed the BSCC, I'm reading from his veto message here, to work with stakeholders to explore ways to address these issues. So in response to that, we have met with Senator Mitchell's office, have talked about a plan to carry out that directive from the governor. We have scheduled in-person meetings with a variety of people, all of the sponsors of SB 1157, as well as the county stakeholders and others to do just that, explore ways to address these issues. Chair Penner and BSCC staff will be meeting with the sponsors in one meeting in a couple of weeks. And we plan to summarize and report back to the administration in early January. If there is action required by this board, we'll bring that back to you in February. And of course, we'll keep you updated on that progress. Also in the legislative report is AB 1998. That bill had addressed a couple of different issues. One set of changes in AB 1998 puts into place new and I would say improved reporting requirements for JJCPA and YOBG. I really want to give a shout out to David Steinhardt, who chaired our Juvenile Justice Data Working Group. The recommendations in AB 1998 are fully consistent with those recommendations. There was some give and take in the final form of the language, but with David's help, we got that through. There's another provision in that bill that was not related to the JJ Data Working Group, but was one of the issues the author was interested in, and that has to do with calling on the BSCC to come up with guidelines for counties on data reporting, and in particular, how to disaggregate statistics having to do with race and ethnicity. The Juvenile Justice Standing Committee, which David Steinhardt chairs, is being asked to address that. That item's on consent and on your agenda. David?
Can I just ask quickly, didn't that get moved to an action item, 1998? Or is it not so?
It's an action item, but on the consent agenda, I saw it.
Oh, you're right, okay, okay. I have a comment on that
Sure.
at some point.
Please. No, it's fine.
Well, it really has, I don't know if this is out of order, but that's great. And I think the Juvenile Justice Standing Committee is the right place to address those, developing those recommendations on race and ethnicity data. When it comes up, there's a due date of April,
Okay.
which is a little quick. We have to look at 58 county systems, and the compliance deadline is into 2018. So I'd ask for a little leeway to go beyond April if we have to, that's all.
We can certainly follow up on that. Thanks, David. Okay, in addition, we want to update you on the working group on sexual assault. At the last board meeting, Erin provided a legal update on PREA, and we were looking at that point, and still to this day, on the extent to which California regulations currently address issues related to sexual assault in detention facilities. We have finished working on the crosswalk document, as we're calling it, that outlines the provisions of PREA, and then whether and how each of those issues is addressed in California regulations. You asked us to form a work group to review that work and make some recommendations to the board for possible revisions to the regulations. I just want to remind everyone that you are going to be considering a whole bunch of regulations revisions on our regular biennial cycle. If this board wants to make changes to these regulations related to sexual assault issues, you can pursue a separate track for that. You always have the ability to take up an issue off track when there's a need to do so. So we've been in touch with a variety of subject matter experts. I wanted to mention that Steve Meinrath, who you'll remember, who was a regular participant in our board meetings and had been working for the ACLU, he's now retired, but Steve Meinrath and several other experts, subject matter experts on PREA, people who have particular information about issues for LGBT people who are in custody, sheriff's representatives from a variety of locations, and others are going to come together. This is going to be an informal staff-run work group to look at the issues and see what might need to come back to the board. So our staff, Allison Ganter and Erin McGuire, will head that up, and again, we'll provide more information to you at the February 2017 meeting on the status of that work. So let's see, and other information items, we did have slated a report from the chair of the State Advisory Committee on Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Last week, we forwarded a press release from the governor's office about 8 new appointments to that committee. And as you'll probably recall, that committee is a governor-appointed committee that is specifically responsible for overseeing federal Title II juvenile justice grants, as well as other duties having to do with statewide planning. Sandy McBrayer, who had served for many, many years as the chair of that committee, is no longer on the committee, so she's not here giving a chair's report. But I do want to thank Sandy for her many years of service and leadership in that capacity. The SACJ, that's the shorthand, SACJ-JDP will meet next in January of next year, and the committee will formally recognize Sandy's work at that time. This board is responsible for naming the chair of the SACJ-JDP, so we anticipate bringing a recommendation back to you at the February board meeting. Just a couple other quick items to note. There are 2 items on your consent agenda that have to do with Burn Jag, the delegation of authority and freezing, or I'm happy to say unfreezing of federal funds. The 2015 federal fiscal year funds were released, so thawed from the freeze basically, during the week of October 31st, and the 2016 funds will be released today. We have had a lot of contact with BJA about some important, but in our view, technical compliance issues that they identified as needing to be addressed. Of course, we understand the importance of following all of those rules. So to address that, the second consent item is to request me as your executive director to have the delegated authority to submit applications. That will help us to avoid missing important deadlines and these issues, coming up where our grantees might not get their funds timely. So we want to stay in compliance with the federal requirements and not have to convene special board meetings. So I just wanted to point that out for your information. And then finally, our next board meeting will be in February of 2017. Please keep in mind, Wednesday, February 15th will be a strategic planning session, and Thursday, the 16th, is our business meeting. We are working on buttoning down a location in San Diego, and we'll send that out to you just as soon as we are in contract with a meeting facility. So this concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any remarks, questions?
Madam Chair, we have a speaker who'd like to comment on Ms. Howard's remarks. Lynn Wu, Staff Attorney with the Prison Law Office. Eric?
So tell me away in the corner. I can just talk about.
Okay.
Or do you need to?
We need European webcast.
Okay. Hi, I am Lynn Wu from the Prison Law Office, and I know many of you obviously. And I'm here because we are one of the co-sponsors for SB 1157, and I really appreciate that the BSCC staff is going to have a meeting with us. I was surprised to hear in the update that you're going to have a separate stakeholder meeting with other stakeholders, who I assume are law enforcement, sheriffs. And I think that's really a missed opportunity for us to have a conversation and really come to consensus together about what visitation means and the importance of visitation. It's probably no surprise there's abundant evidence that of the importance of in-person visitation, and both for the people that are incarcerated and also families, and particularly children who that experience of in-person visitation and that opportunity is really has been shown through lots of research to mitigate the impacts of that adverse childhood experience of having an incarcerated parent. It facilitates reentry, maintaining connections for the people who are incarcerated. It improves institutional safety. I'm happy to provide abundant research to support all of these positions, but I think it's really important that this board takes this opportunity to look at those Title 15 regulations around visitation and to do it quickly. There's a large coalition that has been working on this bill and is continuing to work to support the work here by the BSCC staff. And there's 2 things that we really truly hope that you will be a leader on. One is to gather accurate data about the state of in-person visitation in jails in California. It was very difficult to get accurate information, and there are a lot of different numbers out there about how many jails have actually replaced visitation and have banned in-person visitation. According to information that we've gotten from BSCC staff and other research that we've done, there are actually only 9 counties that are, that have indicated in their plans that they're gonna replace in-person visitation, and only 2 of those are in construction. And 1 of those has indicated to BSCC staff, as communicated to Senator Mitchell's office, that they can provide in-person visitation if necessary. And so we've obviously heard, and I'm sure all of you have heard far different numbers. And so we really think that to have a meaningful conversation, we need to know what this is actually going to cost to make this happen. And then again, you know, we really urge that you revisit the Title 15 regulation, and until you know what the state of visitation is in other jails, to look at the jail construction right now and to halt construction until you get an affirmation from those jails that are in progress about whether or not they plan to provide in-person visitation. So again, I thank you for this opportunity, and I'm eager for the work group meeting. I think it will be really important, but I also hope that there can be some conversations between the co-sponsors, the BSCC staff, and also other stakeholders like sheriffs in some of the other counties. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know how to turn this off.
Okay, thanks. I couldn't find the podium, so you're way ahead of me. What do we do with that? Any other comments regarding the executive director's report before we move on?
Yes, Madam Chair. How do we ensure that while these stakeholder meetings are happening, that those that are in the planning process, who are interestingly planning not to have in-person visitation, do not continue in their project, so then they become in construction, not building a visiting room for family members to see their loved ones? How do we make sure that we freeze those immediately and no one moves forward until this is resolved?
Well, let me give you the short answer to that. And I know that when 1157 was moving towards the governor's desk, there were conversations surrounding many of these issues raised by Lin Wu and your issue also. There are implications for counties that are have established projects and moving forward that prohibit financially the ability to take step backs and redo that without that becoming, and I think the argument has been all along, a mandate from the state to do it in a particular way. We hope at these meetings, we'll have conversations about all of that, but there were philosophically a lot of minds that came together on 1157, and some concessions I think that were given by sheriffs to the author, and we weren't able to find a solid ground. I'm not certain that we're going to be able to freeze anything or prohibit anything that's in process, because there are outcomes of that. But that's what the meetings are set for.
How many?
Let me finish.
Yeah.
That's what the meetings are set for. The data, we're in the process right now of putting together data on what's going on in every county in the state, and considering all the concerns people have. We have AB 900, 1022, 863 in process. Remember, with 844, one of the caveats is that it has to have in-person visitation, and that was done legislatively as that money moved forward. So understanding a great deal of concern about the issues, these very items are what we hope to discuss and set forth by direction of the governor and lend back to the administration for solutions if we can.
So how many projects, when this bill was being sent to the governor, were already in construction?
Well, construction, the definition of construction may be that the ground is broken and dirt has been moved. Factually, when these projects are established, the design portion, at that point, there's a significant financial investment moving forward, and those changes, even prior to dirt moving, are enormously expensive impacts. So,
but when the bill was on the governor's desk, I kept hearing the number 6. There were 6 sheriffs who, I don't even understand why anyone would do this, because to me it seems immoral, chose to build a new project without a visiting room for parents and children to see their loved ones, which is insane.
Well,
Now, hold on. How many were already, what was the status of those 6? And then how many others are in the queue that could become in addition to those 6 while we're sitting and talking about this?
I've seen, excuse me, we have to do this in a,
Yeah.
We'll let staff answer that question, but let me respond first. I don't think that immoral, it's a very strong word. I think that taking advantage of some technologies and having all of that roll forward during a time where it really, frankly, was off the radar of the regulation portion of what we do. So I gotta take issue with that statement because
There's some
really-
other sheriffs that agree with that statement.
well, and maybe those are the things that will come up in the meetings that are coming forward. And I encourage you to join us if you would like. But at this juncture, I think what we have to do is to take a hard look at the data. It is a limited number that are going forward with video visitation. And I can't remember it off the top of my head. It may very well be 6.
The numbers were right in that neighborhood. I remember hearing 7 at one point, and some have indicated that they may be able to make changes. But, you know, to your question, Scott, how many of the approved new jail projects plan a video-only approach? That number is fewer than 10. I don't think there's dispute about that.
So how many of those projects, while we sit and we have stakeholder meetings, will move into the construction phase that we will not be able to stop or change or ask for an amendment while we sit here and dilly-dally and discuss?
And let me try to answer that response in some ways, which is to Chair Penner's point, as a legal matter, once the project is established, which is pre-construction, and in fact, arguably, once the RFP is submitted to our office, that counts as a letter of intent to build and construct a project. And the way the building standards codes work is basically, once you've started a project, you're grandfathered in automatically into that approach. And it's to make it analogous to like residential construction, which is not a good analogy, but that's sort of what it is, which is if you build a new house right now, you have to have sprinklers, you know, in the construction as part of the project. Anything that was in construction, the old building standards apply. So for purposes of any project that has already been established, the way the regulations work, the way the Title 24 regulations work is that even if those regulations are changed, they can still construct under the old regulations.
Question? Yes.
This may have been discussed at the September meeting, which I missed, but what is the primary rationale offered by sheriffs for not having a visiting room? What's the concerns that they have where they might push back against having a visiting room?
I don't know if I would call it the primary rationale. I think that technology became available. There are a number of considerations by using that technology that I think sheriffs took advantage of during a window period of time when the regs did not.
We allowed them
address.
to. There's not even in-person visiting in jails. It is behind glass. So the transference of contraband doesn't even happen. Scott Kernan allows in-person visiting where transference of contraband does happen, and he doesn't try to move it all to video visitation.
Okay, and I think that that's fair, except, let me say this. Philosophically, I may very much agree with you, but I don't get to take my philosophic purview and apply it to what individual sheriffs choose to do in their county. We can only act and react if there's a statute or a regulation that addresses that. And that's the window period we found ourselves in. Now we are going to move forward and hopefully use that grandfather clause to go from here on out. But as you know, and Judge, I can tell you that one of the great considerations when this bill got to the governor's desk was that mandate being imposed on projects already in progress. So I think we all philosophically are there with you. But 3 years ago, when we last looked at our regs, the technology wasn't where it is now, and I think what you're seeing is the new facilities going up and that becoming a consideration, and now having great financial impact. So I don't think any of us in the room necessarily disagree with all of the positives about visiting, on one side of the glass and actually physically being there. And so we'll have to move forward from there, looking at systems and, what the state is actually going to be able to do to those who are in this window period. I don't know how else to address that.
Comment, please.
Yes.
If state policy on this is not settled, if the stakeholder group is still looking at this, if the governor has asked this body to look at it, and if Senator Mitchell has a new bill, then the policy is not settled. So why would we not look for an opportunity to have projects that are in the construction phase come around to whatever the new policy and law is going to be? Is there not a negotiation that can occur with those sheriffs in the counties that are building? I mean, to say that they can do whatever they want on a kind of technicality does not seem right to me. So if policy is changing, those counties that are under construction should be offered an opportunity to engage in discussion to catch up with the policy. Maybe that slows things down, I don't know. Maybe some counties can't do it. But it does not seem right on a sort of technical basis to say that those counties are off the map for what the new policy is going to be.
And I would respond in this way. We're being asked by the governor to meet with everybody, put together all of the comments, all of the alternatives, and report back to the governor. It won't be this body that's telling the governor what to do or what not to do, but advising him of all the things we learned. So understanding that policy may grow out of this, and we certainly will address the regs portion of this. But remember, this is a letter from Senator Mitchell to the governor asking him to give more feedback on the bill itself. And so that's our charge at this juncture.
Can I comment?
Yes, please.
So a couple things. First of all, we have to understand we don't always like what happens for our legislative process, and things are constantly under review. And if people don't like the way it came out, well, the governor decided for whatever reasons to veto this bill. And he asked all of us who were appointed by him to say, okay, continue to look at this. And we know why it happened. We know it's financial. And I don't think it's appropriate for us to intersect in the legislative process, because all the stakeholders will get together. We all are not naive on how those negotiations take place. And if the Senator Mitchell's bill or someone's bill goes through and the governor signs it and there's appropriate funding, then we'll make those changes. But those of you that built a building, and that stopping something now that's already been approved and been through all the processes would be astronomical costs. The other part of it is, remember, the governor's philosophy is that I'm going to give the money to the locals. That's what AB 109 was all about, and let them decide. Each one of these building plans had to be approved by a board of supervisors. So I would suggest that reconciliation may need to take place in those individual counties. Those boards that govern their people that live in that county had to make a decision to approve that one way or another. Now, my personal philosophy is that, that for my county, that's not right. We wouldn't do it that way, but my county's different than Siskiyou County or Kings County or Los Angeles County. And I don't think we need to impose or stop a process that went through the legislative process. The governor decided it wasn't appropriate, and we continue to move forward under the rules of that funding process before.
No, but Sheriff, everything I've ever heard from the Sheriff's Association in terms of the construction of billions of dollars of facilities is we want to tear down old, dilapidated, dungeon-like facilities and build program space and build things that aid rehabilitation and stop the flow of people in and out of the system. And taking away a visiting room that's behind glass is just so anti-evidence-based and anti the entire approach of the entire Sheriff's Association that it's just like mind-boggling to me. And that we as a board somehow allowed this to happen. I just feel like for some reason we're shirking our duties. Like, this is so egregious in my mind, and so the opposite of what the entire association says that this is all about.
And I would just interject one more time, that philosophically, I don't know that you and I are very far apart, but we have to operate on regs and policy, and we cannot say to a facility that's being designed and say, well, we philosophically think this is the wrong way to go if the regs don't prohibit it. And so that's the juncture we're at, and it's not comfortable. I think you'll see sheriffs all over the state do it differently. I think it's a really good discussion, and I welcome you to stay in the discussion, but if it could have been solved, the bill would have been signed. I mean, that's one thing I think we're all certain on.
Chair, my fear is that if there's 4 other projects that are in the queue, and I want to get my building built, I'm going to rush them through while the BSCC has stakeholder meetings and dilly dallies and start construction, so I'm now grandfathered in.
Yeah.
I want to know what we can do with those 4 projects.
Yeah, I don't know that, first of all, we'd have to define in the queue. I think some people think if we haven't broken ground yet, they're in the queue, but factually, if the design portion of it has taken place, it's expensive to redesign. And I don't have all those answers for you right now. I certainly share some of your concerns, but as I said before, if this bill could have been signed, I believe it would have been. So it has a number of prohibitions in the way that we have to consider when we meet with these stakeholder groups to provide some sort of solutions and common ground. So that's what we're going to try to accomplish. I don't know how well we'll do. Judge?
Just to make sure that I understand what the problem is in terms of having these visiting rooms, is the primary pushback that we have projects that are going on now and it's too expensive to try to modify them, or is there another argument against having visiting rooms?
You know,
No, I think
It's money.
it's money. I don't think that's,
It's millions and millions of
To
dollars.
modify plans that are already in the works, is that?
Modify plans and modify construction that's already in the works. And I believe the governor did a pretty thorough I mean, I don't know, and Scott, you're closer to him than probably any of us, but I'm assuming he did a ton of research and had his staff do it to see, because he probably wanted to sign it also, and he just realized we just can't do it.
and if I can just interject one more thing, a little bit of a history on this. When realignment came along, the locals were super concerned about, being given this workload in terms of, the relocation of individuals back to various counties to handle. And so there was a huge cry for a constitutional protection of the money that we were given, and included in Prop 30, which passed, which the governor did to protect the funding, was that the unfunded, there would be no unfunded mandates, and that going forward that the counties wouldn't be asked to assume states' mandates without payment for what is going forward. So I think it's all of those things, sort of combined that created this issue. Or I think philosophically, all of us would agree it should have been signed. I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody in the room, but that's where we're at right now. Okay, good discussion. See, this is what we're going to do in December as we move forward, and not very easy answers in many issues. Moving on, legal update from Counsel McGuire.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have one brief legal update, which was we discussed a little bit about new requirements that were coming down from the federal government for to receive burn JAG funding, specifically around the requirement that receiving entities and subrecipients of grants certify that they're in compliance with 8 U.S.C. 1373. At the last board meeting, we had expected that we would be placing new federal assurances in our contract documents with the locals so that it would impact fiscal year 2016, which began on October 1st. What we subsequently received from the federal government is in your binder. which was a FAQ, which was posted on October 6th by the BJA, indicating that this, in fact, new federal assurance would not apply to fiscal year 2016, and that we should expect it to apply in fiscal year 2017. This guidance also does not take into account the fact that we had a new election and a new administration will be coming in. And so this FAQ may in fact get updated again as soon as the new administration is in office. But this is sort of the guidance that we are operating under right now, and in which case we have not included any additional assurances in our fiscal year 2016 documents because the feds told us we didn't have to do that. So if there are any questions on that, I'd be happy to respond, but that's just sort of an update on the burn JAG funding.
Any questions? As we move forward to the consent items, I would invite anyone, and everybody seems to know this process, to make sure they fill out a speaker's card. And are we giving them to you right now, Tracy?
Yep.
And
I
we'll,
don't have any on the consent item.
okay, and we will be limiting those remarks to 2 minutes when we move forward. It's just in case you're developing them in your mind. I don't want to surprise you. Moving on to the consent items, that's item A through F.
Madam Chair, I think Sheriff Groudon and I have to recuse ourselves from item E because we are recipients of that money.
Okay.
And I'll move approval on all items but item E.
And I'll miss you too.
I'll second.
Okay, and then
Do we have to leave, Aaron?
Yeah, I would, just for the sake of compliance, we would ask, and again, I'd ask Chief Brown and Chief Rottola, you may be receiving some burn JAG funding as well. I'm gonna look at Chief Bejarano as well. This really is a hyper-technical compliance with our existing laws. But just for the sake of consistency and everything else, we'd ask you to step out of the room and make sure we have
Come
1,
back
2,
in an
3,
hour?
4, 5, 6. You're gonna come back in exactly, I would say about 20 seconds, so don't walk too far away. And we can have do have a quorum and a majority of the board members present. I believe that can still take action on the consent calendar, or on these 2 items, and then we'll come back and
So we're
vote on the entire consent.
we're going to now take item E1 and E2 with the appropriate members removed from the room and ask if there's any objection to them going under consent.
Yeah, can we get a
We need a
motion in
motion
a
in a
second?
second.
Just, and this is just for item E.
A motion?
A motion.
Scott?
Well, I guess I was saying, and I misstated it, because we don't want to pull those items. If no one wants to pull them, I'm looking for a motion for those to be handled on the consent
So
agenda.
I'll move E1 and E2.
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, abstained. For the record, we know who's out of the room.
Yes, please, if we can note our abstentions and our board members who have left the room for the minutes.
Sheriff Groudon, Sheriff Dean, Chief Bertola, Chief Brown, Chief Bejarano have all been out of the room while this matter was taken care of.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I invite the board members back into the room for the rest of the consent agenda. See, it worries me we lost Sheriff Dean now. The chances of that happening were pretty good. I left Chief Bejarano in charge of Sheriff Dean, and we've lost them both. There we go. So in your absence, the remaining members of the board handled item E, and it was remains on the consent agenda and was approved as a consent item. Now we will move to items A, B, C, D, and F on the consent agenda, including approval of minutes and relinquishments. I'd ask you all to review those and see if we want to pull any of those items from the agenda.
I'll go ahead and move all of those items with the comment that the deadline on 1998 recommendations would be flexible.
Second?
Second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on
Madam
now.
Chair, sorry, I got a late comment on this one. Manuel Perez, Director of Madera County Department of Corrections, would like to speak on item C. Not to, just to, as a thank you,
Oh, okay.
not.
Well, that may. Come on up.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Manuel Perez, I'm the Director of Corrections in Madera County. I just wanted to thank the board on behalf of Madera County. I do have in hand the acceptance from the Board of Supervisors for the SB 1022. The comment I wanted to make was to say thank you on behalf of the community. Madera County, this will be our third phase of construction. But I think what's important is sort of been a blessing because we've been on the waiting list for about 3 years. And we're getting ready to do a new needs assessment. And the reason why I say it's a blessing is because I think the 3 years have given us a new vision for Madera County. And I think the new needs assessment is going to address the needs of the community. And I think it's important that everybody understand that the needs that we are seeing now over the years is mental health. And I think this project is going to give Madera County the opportunity to move forward, stay positive, lead the direction in corrections and addressing those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on now to action items, beginning with item G. Yvonne Gardner, Standard and Training Corrections Compliance Report, the annual update. It's really exciting to have Yvonne at the beginning of the agenda. Yvonne historically goes at the end of the agenda. So we wanted to give her a full room today.
So good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Yvonne Garner, Deputy Director of the Standards and Training for Corrections Division. Agenda item G is an information item. As Madam Chair stated, this is STC's annual report. Is it not on? Oh, sorry, I speak so loud I can't hear. So it is STC's annual report for 2015-2016. This presentation is really going to focus on the compliance findings for that year and providing an update on STC's project to revise its selection and training standards. So in fiscal year 2015-2016, there were 161 agencies who participated in the STC program. Those agencies employed nearly 34,000 local corrections staff, including adult corrections officers, juvenile corrections officers, probation officers, their supervisors, and their managers. STC's minimum training standards required nearly 1.6 million hours of training for those staff. But the actual number of training hours completed by those staff exceed that number because many agencies exceed STC's minimum training standard. All agencies that participate in the STC program must meet STC's required training standards. And those standards require that all employees complete a prescribed course of training within the first year of hire and a prescribed number of hours every year thereafter. STC conducts an annual review of every participating agency's training records to ensure that those training standards are met. To be found in compliance with STC's training standards, all of an agency's employees must have completed the required STC training hours or have met one of STC's criteria for exemption. And that criteria includes circumstances such as significant medical or other type of leave during the year. If an agency fails to train all of its employees and does not meet STC's criteria for exception, then that agency is found out of compliance. For fiscal year 2015-2016, 155 agencies were found to be in compliance with SCC's training standards, and 6 agencies were found to be out of compliance. And you can see a list of those agencies. I believe it's attachments 2 and 3 of your report. I'd just like to say that this is one of the highest rates of compliance that we have seen in the last 15 years. Those agencies that were found out of compliance have completed a corrective action plan that will be monitored by their assigned field representative to ensure that they're able to come back into compliance. And we are very confident that all of those agencies will be able to do so. So in addition to our regular program activities, and you can see many of those stats also in your report, SCC has been very, very busy working on its large project to examine and revise its selection and training standards. And one of those priority focus areas has been the revision of the core training for our entry-level positions of adult corrections officer, juvenile corrections officer, and probation officer. So as you may remember, SCC completed a very large job analysis of those classifications and those positions to ensure that we really understood what those jobs look like today. And especially as they have been impacted by major policy changes, not the least of which was public safety realignment, but also things like technological changes that have impacted the job and just natural changes that occur in the jobs over time. Through that process, we learned that one of the major areas of change was in the area of mental health. So when we examined and looked at this issue, we saw that there weren't a lot of new tasks or new responsibilities related to mental health. What we did see, though, was a complete restructuring of those tasks, meaning many tasks that were performed less frequently are being performed more frequently, and the criticality and frequency of many of the tasks associated with mental health duties has skyrocketed. So when we asked the question around, well, what's going on here, what we heard was, although there has always been mentally ill offenders in our facilities and on our probation caseloads, the proportion of mentally ill offenders now in our facilities and on our caseloads has dramatically increased. And as a result, staff are spending significantly more time on mental health related tasks, such as identifying signs and symptoms, making referrals, interventions, and de-escalation techniques. Staff also reported to us that the training that they currently receive in these areas, it isn't enough, and it doesn't include the right content. So this is something that we've been talking about how to address, and last week we convened an amazing group of experts to come together and help us determine what is the appropriate mental health training that we should be providing to our entry-level corrections officers. And again, this includes ACOs, JCOs, and POs. And we had a group of experts come from across the state and Mississippi and Colorado to come help us sort through this. When we started this process, we were hoping to get about 15 people to come together. And our phone kept ringing once the word got out that we were doing this. And we finally had to cap it at 23. There was a ton of interest by folks who are currently clinicians and working in delivering mental health services, to those who are handling these caseloads and working with mentally ill offenders in our facilities, as well as academia and our law enforcement partners such as CDCR, CHP, and POST, who have already developed some enhancements on their mental health training and crisis intervention. So we brought together representatives from all of these areas to come help us figure out how mental health training should be addressed for our corrections officers. The work group was charged with, really looking at entry-level core. So not any sort of training that goes beyond, but what do they need to know when they are employed in these positions? So core training. And they took a two-pronged approach to this. So we knew that we would have a standalone mental health training module. But we also asked them to look at all of the other 29 modules that exist in our core training and determine where there needs to be mental health training included in those modules. And an example of that is in booking. So when someone comes into the booking process, what does an officer need to know? If someone seems to be suffering from a mental health crisis. So what sort of training needs to be infused into our booking module to ensure that we are capturing that issue while we are teaching what an officer needs to know through the booking process. So really this two-pronged was we need to look at the standalone mental health unit, and we need to infuse mental health training in all other areas where there is a connection with mental health. So the work group worked over 2 days. They looked at over 260 performance objectives. They did an amazing job of looking at all of those existing modules and enhancing them with mental health training. They also focused on the standalone mental health training unit and identified 9 learning domains that will ultimately form the behavioral health training module, which was my education when I kept talking about mental health training and was schooled that behavioral health training is the more appropriate term, so that's the one we'll be using moving forward. But the 9 learning domains that they talked about included things like recognizing signs and symptoms, challenging the mental health stigma and your own personal bias around mental health, suicide prevention, intervention, and communication, including de-escalation techniques. The experts also made recommendations on the length of training and spent a significant amount of time talking about areas where they really believed that learning needed to be reinforced through the use of scenarios or case studies. So they're saying that some of these areas are so important that we really need to make sure we're spending time allowing our learners to engage with this topic in a significant way. So they helped provide some guidance for us on that. So for next steps, we're going to be taking all of that information that they provided and developing a model lesson plan that will be made available to all of our training providers that offer core training. And this is a first for STC. So typically when we set our training standards, we identify the performance objectives, we identify the number of instructional hours and the testing mechanisms, but the content is developed by the core training providers. But through this work group process, we recognized that the specialty of this particular training area really benefits the entire system through a sort of standardized approach to how we deliver training. So we will be offering and taking this information and developing an entire lesson plan. So it'll include an instructor book, participant workbooks. It'll spend the time looking at all of those learner engagement activities that the subject matter experts recommended. And so we will be making that available to all of our core providers, as well as setting the standard for the training. And we think that by doing this, then everyone will benefit the way we benefited from this group of subject matter experts coming together. In February, we will be conducting additional work groups to look at the rest of the core training curriculum. And we are hoping to have fully revised core courses by the summer of 2017. I'd also like to state that all of this work is being done under the guidance of an executive steering committee, and that committee is being chaired by Chief Bertola. So I'd like to say thank you, Chief Bertola, for sticking with us on this very, very long, lengthy, but very worthwhile project. Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
I just had, if I could, I just have one comment on the STC, on the core training for the mental health. Is STC planning on offering that to experienced officers who have already done core, possibly down the road, that have not received that type of training, or?
So what this process looked at was, what do our entry-level officers need to know upon hire? So what came out through those discussions was there should be some recommendations for what happens beyond that. So what they need as they are working on these jobs longer. So we do expect that we will have a standard and then some additional recommendations for additional training beyond.
Thank you. Can I comment? So we've gone through this, and I know you have experts in the thing. So everybody that came out of my academy goes through a 40-hour CIT training, crisis intervention training. But actually what we found, it didn't really work well because of just what I talked about was the experience. So I'm not on the committee, but really encourage that we look at something brief, and it could be what you're doing, and then a follow-up, because we're finding we send them back after 6 months to a year. They've had some real world experience, and they really take much more seriously their role and how important that interaction is with those with mental illness challenges.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was a lot of conversation around the table is, yes, we understand SCC sets the minimum standard on hire, but there really needs to be that experience that's sort of overlaid with training at a later date. So that's why they came up actually with the recommendation that we would include recommendations along with the standards around training that goes beyond what SCC can set standards for.
Thank you.
Anything further? Mr. Shaw?
I actually have a question about the out of compliance. I was just looking through some of them, they're all first year out of compliance. Just so I understand a little bit better, those that are out of compliance received their STC money for that year, they just didn't accomplish what they needed to in terms of all their staff being properly trained.
Correct, and it is important to know that the STC funding doesn't cover all of their training needs. But yes, they did receive their STC funding, they were out of compliance, they have developed a corrective action plan to come back into compliance that we have reviewed, and we have worked with them to help ensure that they're on target for next year, for this year.
I was just noting that a couple of them are substantially out of compliance.
Yeah.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah, and those, if I can add, those that are substantially out of compliance, they really struggled with some retention issues. So they had a lot of folks leaving positions and a lot of new positions coming on board that they were trying to balance, sort of keeping their facilities running and getting their new folks trained.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, and just as a sort of overarching statement, it's often very difficult for small agencies to get somebody in training in the first year, and so that's why you see a little bit. It's not that they care less.
No, not at all, but it is hard. I mean, in some of our agencies, we have, some of our jails, and they have 3, 4 people, running their jail. So when one of those positions is vacant, that's a 25% vacancy rate, very hard to operate.
Well, and now that we're, just concentrating on some negatives, I'd like to say incredible compliance. I've been on this board a long time, and so what we really know is the state's, sort of all falling into place and some really positive things are happening. And the fact that you're looking at curriculum this year and having a lot of interventions surrounding the severely mentally ill population are massively positive for that group of churners that we see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on now to item H. Colleen Stoner coming forward to do the lead grant for law enforcement assisted diversion. This is for the approval of the RFP, I believe.
And before we begin this item, Madam Chair, I think I spoke to all our board members, but just in case I missed someone, if anyone is expecting to apply or receive direct funding from this grant, if you could please excuse yourself at this point.
No, you were staying. Let the record reflect. Sheriff Brogdon is leaving the room.
And Chief Ertola.
Chief Ertola is leaving the room.
You sure, Jeff Dean?
Scott gave me a good, okay, we still have a quorum.
Yeah.
Council? Great.
I'm not sure they're actually applying for funding, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Just wanted
The
to.
chair feels a bit, swindled right now. The chair's gonna get past it. Go ahead, Colleen.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I am Colleen Stoner, field representative, and presenting agenda item H. This agenda item requests approval for the release of the request for proposals, an RFP, for the law enforcement assisted diversion pilot program, which I will refer to as the LEAD program going forward. Senate Bill 843 established the LEAD program in this year's budget, which is to be administered by the BSCC. The goal is to improve public safety and reduce recidivism by increasing access to and the use of social services, while at the same time reducing the cost of repeated incarceration. Modeled after the LEAD project in Seattle, Washington, This project will divert individuals who may be arrested for or who have a history of low-level drug offenses or prostitution to social services in lieu of prosecution. The kinds of services that would be provided may include, but are not limited to, case management, housing, medical care, mental health care, treatment for substance use disorders, employment training and placement, civil legal services, and system navigation. Up to 3 jurisdictions are to be selected through a competitive bid process to receive funding for the lead project. $15 million was appropriated from the general fund for this project, and the board is authorized to spend up to $550,000 of that amount for 2 purposes. The first being to contract with an outside evaluator to determine the program's effectiveness, and second, to contract with experts in the implementation of a lead program and provide that technical assistance to participating jurisdictions. We are at the final stages of a contract with the California State University Long Beach for the project evaluation, and are also near completion for a contract with the Seattle Lead Project for technical assistance. As indicated in your report, the LEAD National Bureau in Seattle, Washington is organized through the Public Defenders Association and holds a trademark on LEAD. They are working with us on a revocable license to use their name going forward. On September 22nd, the board approved the use of the funding for this grant project and authorized an executive steering committee to be established to oversee the development of the RFP process. The board appointed Chief Bejarano and Francine Tornor as the chairs. The board also authorized the chairs to work with staff to name the members of the ESC. The ESC came together on October 11th and October 12th for 2 very full days to develop the proposed program design, application requirements, technical components, and the rating criteria. 3 technical consultants from the Seattle project were present at the ESC meetings to provide a background on the specifics of the project as it is implemented in Seattle and offer guidance and input to the ESC in considering the design of the California model. We were also fortunate to have 3 of the evaluators from California State University Long Beach throughout the 2-day meeting, who offered valuable information and input to the ESC on issues to be considered that could affect the success of the evaluation of the grantees and their ability to collect data and measure outcomes. Key elements of the project that we think are important is that it's a collaborative model intended to promote a transformation of institutional relationships that allows law enforcement, social services, public defenders, and prosecutors to create new and more effective approaches to working together on low-level drug enforcement and prostitution. As a community-based diversion program that uses human resources to increase public safety and order, the LEAD program requires commitment, buy-in, and ongoing involvement from the key stakeholders who are willing to engage with each other and with the community in the design, implementation, and maintenance of the project. This partnership involves a voluntary agreement among the independent decision makers, including public partners, to collaborate and share in the investments and the outcome of this project. The LEAD program relies on the understanding that participation is voluntary and that individuals entering the program may be at different states of readiness and may progress at their own pace without fear of being terminated from the program or prosecuted. Participants will not be denied services if they continue to use substances or are involved in further criminal activity. As a result, housing services do not require participant abstinence from substance use to determine housing eligibility or as a condition of remaining housed. The eligible applicants for this project are cities or counties. In the case of a city, the applicants to submit application should be submitted by the city council or the chief administrative office, city manager, for example, and 1 proposal per city may be submitted. In the case of a county applicant, the application is to be submitted by the Board of Supervisors or the Chief County Administrative Officer. Again, 1 proposal per county may be submitted. Individual applicants may request up to $5,900,000, and all applications must include a 10% match. Pending approval by the board, the RFP will be released tomorrow, and applicants will have until February 1st, 2017 to submit their proposals. We will return to the board in April with funding recommendations. The grant period anticipated is April 21st, 2017 through June 30th, 2019. At this time, staff recommends that the board approve the release of the lead grant RFP as recommended by the Executive Steering Committee, and approve staff to change the name of the grant if legally required.
And if I understand that correctly, this could be a trademark name.
It could be an issue.
So I think Linda's a good name. I'll work it into an acronym if I get a minute, but I'd like to thank the co-chairs, Chief Barron and Commissioner Turner. Go ahead, Chief.
Just make a few comments. Want to first of all thank the committee, a lot of work over 2 days, and also thank Francine, our co-chair for the ESC. Obviously, like all the other committees, a lot of work over 2 days, very robust, passionate opinions and viewpoints and input regarding the development of the RFP. Also love the idea of having the evaluators in early from day one through the second day as we develop the RFP and also the rating criteria. A big thank you also to Ms. Stoner and the staff. A lot of work as far as leading us through the 2 days of that process. And we had a lot of edits, a lot of recommendations, a lot of input after the final meeting. And again, staff accommodated all of the work leading up to the final minute of the preparation of the RFP. So thank you again for all the great work by the staff.
Okay. I just want to echo what Chief B said. This was my first opportunity to go co-chair an ESC, and I was completely astonished at all of the work and detail and like down to the verbiage and everything else. It was good, and I think this grant is going to be awesome, and I think it can bring a lot of good things moving forward. And the passion that the whole panel brings, like the Chief said, it was new to me. So I really enjoyed having that opportunity and just wanted to thank the staff for all the work that they do. And there's a lot that goes into it. So thank you for that opportunity to do that.
And we have not told Francine about how long it takes to rate.
No, baby steps.
60 hours of your life you'll never get back, but we're really excited you signed on. So thank you to the ESC. Any comments on this item? Moving forward, then, can I get a recommendation or a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I ask for comment.
Aye.
Recused, abstained, seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. And we can invite all of those gentlemen and ladies back into the room.
Yes, we are.
I'm afraid we've lost them, except I can see Chief.
Which item is this on our agenda?
Item I. And just, moving now to item I, and Maggie promised that she would get these two things done before she retired, and true to her word, she did that. So seeing Maggie forward, please move forward on the item. Okay?
And I think on this one too, I know Sheriff Groudon is purposely being absent at this point as a potential applicant for this funding as well. So if we can note that in the minutes, thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Agenda item I, request the approval of the draft of Title 15 California Code of Regulations for SB 844 and begin the rulemaking process with the Office of Administrative Law. As you're aware, SB 844 became law June 27th of 2016, which authorizes $270 million for construction of local adult criminal justice facilities. with 20 million set aside for the county of Napa. At its September meeting, the board approved the established ESC with board member Sheriff Jeff Dean as the chair. Sheriff Dean, we'd like to thank you very much and the ESC for all the work and dedication towards this effort. The 844 requires that BSCC develop regulations that explain requirements of the legislation. The ESC reviewed and made recommendations for 844 regulations. In order to expedite the regulatory process, the BSCC will submit an emergency rulemaking filing with the Office of Administrative Law to address ongoing needs of county jails, as well as specifically addressing the ongoing emergency conditions in the Napa County Jail caused by the 2014 earthquake. The recommendations are as follows. The board determined that the proposed regulations are necessary to address an emergency as defined in Government Code Section 11342.545. 2, the board approved the draft regulations and directs staff to begin the adoption of emergency regulations. And 3, the board approved the filing of a certificate of compliance with the Office of Administrative Law subsequent to the emergency process, contingent on there being no further substantial edits. Any questions?
Any comments from the board? Any public comment on this item? Looking for a motion from the board?
Motion. Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
Sure, I'd just like to know Sheriff Broughton stepped out in case he applies for the money.
Correct. If you hadn't been out of the room, you would have stayed. Oh, that was my internal dialogue. Yes.
I need to know who did the first and the second?
Second.
Second.
First and second.
Thank you.
Moving on to item J.
Okay, so agenda item J, request that the board approve Senate Bill 844, request for proposals, and to approve the release of the RFP following the final adoption of the SB 844 regulations. Again, you're aware SB 844 passed in June 2016, authorizing $270 million for adult local criminal justice facilities construction, with $20 million set aside for Napa County. SB 844 is pretty consistent with the previous round of facility construction in SB 863. However, there are 3 distinctive differences. SB 844 requires that 1, any locked facility constructed or renovated with state funding awarded under this program shall include space to provide on-site, in-person visitation capable of meeting or surpassing the minimum number of weekly visits required by regulations for persons detained in the facility. 2, any county applying for financing, this financing authority shall include a description of efforts to address sexual abuse in the adult criminal justice facility constructed or renovated. And 3, financing shall be awarded only to those counties that have received a partial award or never received an award from the state financing program authorized in Chapter 3.1, which is AB 900, SB 1022, and SB 863. Similar to SB 863, the BSCC shall determine funding and scoring criteria consistent with the requirements in SB 844. As a mandatory criterion, counties are required to submit pre-trial data from January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015, and a description of the county's current risk assessment-based pre-trial release program. Funding consideration shall be given to counties seeking to replace compacted, outdated, or unsafe housing with treatment space, or seeking to renovate existing, build new facilities that provide adequate space for the provision of treatment and rehabilitative services, including mental health. Preference shall be given to those counties who are ready to proceed. And projects may replace existing housing capacity, realizing only a minimal increase in capacity, with the county certifying that they will not lease beds, either public or private, for a period of 10 years beyond the completion date of the facility. Again, as you are aware, in September, the September meeting, the board approved the ESC with Sheriff Dean Broughton as chair to develop recommendations for the RFP and make conditional award recommendations to the board. The
You
ES,
did mean
did I
Jeff
say
Dean,
something
right?
different?
You said Dean Groudon, which
Oh
is,
my
really
gosh.
would have been better, but
Sorry.
it's Dean.
I got, Dean Groudon was 1022, so too many Deans going
My
on.
younger brother.
It's their fault because they're both named Dean. That's what.
They do that on purpose. The ESC met October 20th and November 10th. Additionally, the ESC received letters from the public prior to each ESC meetings. The letters are attached to this item. The RFP is intended to solicit proposals to establish a ranked ordered conditional award county awards. Projects that are given conditional awards will ultimately need to obtain final approval of financing eligibility by the State Public Works Board. Staff recommends that the board approve SB 844 Adult Criminal Justice Facility Financing RFP and approve its release after the regulations have been adopted, and that's tentatively in December of this year. So this item is a little bit different than we've historically done, to where we're asking to move forward with the adoption of the regulations. And once those get adopted, we can expedite and release the RFP thereafter. Any questions?
Just also for the record, we received letters of public comment that are attached to the agenda.
Yes, we did.
Any questions from the board? Public comment at this juncture. Anything?
We do a public comment, sorry.
I want
Changing something in the press release. Israel Villa from MUPA is first, and then Corey Salzillo from the California State Sheriff's Association will follow.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see you all. My name is Israel Villa. I'm a program assistant with MIPA in Salinas. I come here today in support of that letter of recommendations and also to address concerns regarding the SB 844 mandates. The RFP only mentions in-person visitation space as eligibility criteria. However, more information is needed as someone who knows, understands, and appreciates the importance of such visits. And they are crucial to folks who are inside. Visiting is definitely very crucial, and I gotta agree with Scott that for any county or any sheriff to try to take them, I do feel that it is immoral and inhumane. As again, that is a crucial part of many folks' sanity, right? And speaking from experience, for some people, that's all they have to look forward to while they are doing their time. Understanding that they're there for a reason, for being punishment. However, we still want to rehabilitate and we want to stop recidivism rates, and visitation plays a crucial role in that. Also, our communities, I feel that our communities need to see and be aware of what our counties are planning to build, right? And what this space will be used for. And I feel that counties should be asked to spell this out in their applications. Lastly, regarding the sexual assault reduction efforts, the RFP only mentions that counties must describe how they plan to reduce sexual assaults in their new or renovated facilities. We strongly feel that the ESC needs to be able to rate how counties propose this. And as of now, there is no rating criteria attached to this description. Thank you very much for your time and your patience.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Members, thank you very much. Corey Salzillo on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. Just wanted to note a quick word of thanks to the Commission, the ESC in particular, Sheriff Dean, for taking the time to do so much hard work on this RFP, to put the process together, to take it from an idea to a bill through the legislative process, through the governor and all the governor's assistants, the administration, and this body to bring this to fruition. This $250 million, $270 million if you include NAPA, will make meaningful changes in counties across the state that have yet so far been unsuccessful in getting an award to improve their jail facilities and their needs. So again, we just thank you for your efforts.
And Erica Webster from CJCJ.
Good morning, I'm Erica Webster. I'm with the Center of Juvenile and Criminal Justice. Our group and our fellow advocates submitted a letter for the board's review earlier, but I'm going to focus on a couple of our concerns that we have with this SB 844 RFP. So as you know, the legislation stated that, gave two eligibility criteria stating that in order to be eligible for this $250 million, counties had to propose in-person visitation space in their new or renovated construction projects. And we feel that this RFP does not explicitly ask applicants to describe what that space is going to look like and how they're going to implement in-person visitation. As has been discussed during this meeting, in-person visitation has dramatic effects on recidivism. It reduces violence within a facility, and it helps families maintain connection while one of their loved ones is incarcerated. And as such, the communities that are going to be most impacted by these jail projects should have the opportunity to see what their counties are proposing on doing when it comes to in-person visitation. The second eligibility criteria was that counties must describe how they plan to reduce sexual assault in their new projects. While the RFP does ask that counties describe, it does not rate what they describe, which then could lead to a situation where a county describes a poorly conceived or non-evidence-based sexual assault reduction measure that's not based on best practices in this area, and the ESC will not have the opportunity to reduce their score compared to a county who has proposed a more well-researched sexual assault reduction measure. Some members of the ESC have stated that it is outside of the scope of their duties as the executive steering committee to pass judgment on what counties propose to do when it comes to sexual assault reduction. I would like to vehemently disagree with that statement. And if ESC members feel unprepared to judge what counties plan to do, there is an opportunity for the staff for the ESC to solicit technical assistance, which could be administered during their leaders training meeting, for example. So as I said, we submitted a letter listing some of our concerns with this RFP. However, since those two issues are mandated in the legislation, we sincerely hope that the board discusses how this RFP can be improved in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Even further. Mr. Steiner.
So thank you for the comments, and I read through the letters from CJ, which were quite extensive. In terms of the visitation space, we're at this point, because we have a legislative instruction here, we're beyond the discussion we had earlier. So in this case, the facilities have to go down this route. But I do think that a solid point has been raised in that there's no nexus between this requirement and what the proposal reviewers get to see. There's not even a requirement that proposals describe what they're going to do in terms of visitation space. So I think that is a deficiency. I mean, many other things were suggested in changing the RFP, and I like to defer to the ESCs that design the RFPs. But I think that there should be, that it needs to go one more step in that applicants should have to describe what they're going to do in terms of the visitation requirement here. And that's not in this proposal.
I believe we have a response to that because we've had that discussion in the office.
Right, do you want to continue?
I can start. We did define what it means to have in-person visitation, both in the regulations, which is at page 4 under agenda item I, and then further in the RFP, which is page 58. We took the in-person visitation definition actually from SB 1157. As part of the RFP as well, they also have to agree that they're going to comply with Title 15 and Title 24, in addition to these regulations, which will require in-person visitation. And Title 15 requires right now that they have to have a minimum of 2 visits per week, at least 30 minutes each. So they have to agree to that as part of applying for this funding.
But agreeing to it is one thing, and describing what they're going to do is another. And I think that's missing from this proposal. I get what you're saying. But this is, I mean, it could be, what is it? Maybe it's a room closet or something. We won't, the proposal raters won't know unless it's described.
I just would like to also add, is this on?
No.
It says it's on. Okay, is it on now? Okay. Okay, so when a county submits their proposal, and it is awarded, or actually when they submit their proposal, we have to look at their proposal. And there's a process when a county is conditionally awarded that we go through where they have to submit a program statement from Title 15 that explains how they're going to do the visitation. And then when we plan review the project, we have to make sure, that's part of our authority at the BSCC, is to make sure that they have visitation space that can support the population that they're proposing. And then the FSO division, then you have inspectors that go out biannually to make sure that that visitation's going on. And as Sheriff Dean has said, some of the things that I did as an inspector was to actually get the population, the number of stalls, their entire weekly program schedule to make sure that these things were happening.
So I won't go on much further, but I want to ask the ESC chair. So are you, this is a process that's not made clear in the RFP, that there is a review process to ensure compliance with this new provision in 844. So are you persuaded that those steps and protections are in place so that the RPs and the proposals submitted, will have that review, because it's not explicit in the
Yeah,
RFP?
absolutely, because it's kind of, we went through this cycle where all of a sudden this video visitation came in. Prior to that, it was clear, just like how big is a medical room supposed to be and how big is the safety cell supposed to be. So I'm confident that everyone will be mandated to be in compliance. And we had a long discussion at the committee, and everybody except for one member of the ESC was comfortable with the criteria and how it was established. And it was a very diverse ESC. Mental health professionals, nurses, all sorts of practitioners. So I was comfortable with it. I would say if you start rating what a visiting room looks like, the individual raters, then you have to rate every single aspect of every Title 24, Title 15 element of a facility, whether adult or juvenile.
Well, and I'm cognizant too that what you're rating and complying with today may be different tomorrow. But I did learn something new, which is that there is a review process to back up what's in the RFP to ensure compliance with the standards as they are now. So that's helpful to know.
And I think it's pretty clear to anybody that's applying now what the rules of the game are. And I might add, it was, and Ms. Webster was at all the meetings, and in meetings these days, we seem to have lost our civility, but she disagreed with us on several issues, but I appreciate your professionalism, your civility, and it was very articulate in the way you presented it. We just, we agreed to disagree, and we did talk about it for a long time on 2 or 3 of the issues, including the sexual assault definitions.
In reckoning back to an earlier conversation we had, we are not silent on these regs where we were prior to this. And so what you will see that they'll inspect towards it. And so I have a great deal of confidence that will go into play. And what we didn't want to do is to put the ESC members in the position of, measuring or, having to do computations about exactly what that would happen, because it takes full-blown professionals that are in the field of, analyzing these construction plans to be able to implement that. So we simply hold them to a commitment, and the regs will further protect that.
And that's new from what we have done before?
Yes.
Well, no.
Yeah.
We have a biennial inspection and then a plan review process for anything that's being.
But the difference is, I think the visitation is different.
Yes, and they will be inspected to that because of the legislation.
There's a mandate in 844 that you will have in-person through glass visitation.
Good.
Madam Chair, can I just say one thing to thank you?
Me personally, or Jeff Dean, or
Since I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Retiring, I just want to thank my fearless leader, Linda Penner, who is just, that is the best way to describe her, fearless. And I also Executive Director Howard. I've often teased them saying, thank you very much for this opportunity, but with a very heavy heart, I say thank you for that opportunity. It was awesome. The responsibility that this board has is such an awesome responsibility. I've been doing this public service stuff for about 30 years now, and it's been a pleasure to serve to this board and the public and the awesome staff at the BSCC. It's just very humbling, and I feel very, very lucky to have had 30 great years.
Thank you.
That's
You
all I
will be
want to say.
missed. Yes, we had public comment. The board has had an opportunity to respond. Anything further from the board? I need a motion and a second.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to another little work product, Prop 47. Woo! We have big times right now. Ricardo Goodrich is with us, and unbelievable workload and heavy lift on this. So Ricardo, take us through.
And before we begin this item, Madam Chair, they're already exiting the premises, but Chief Brown and Chief Bertola are leaving, and I believe Sheriff Brown, and I think you wanted to be absent for this. You're okay on this item, Prop 47? I think you're okay.
He's
You're giving the money, you're not taking the money.
There's no mistake while you're right next to me.
Okay, great. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Ricardo Goodrich, field representative from the Corrections Planning and Programs Division. Agenda item K, request that the board approve and release the Proposition 47 grant request for proposals. Proposition 47 was a voter-approved initiative that allocated 65% of the state savings from the implementation of the proposition to the BSCC to administer a grant program. Prior board actions dating back to 2015 were instrumental in allowing the Executive Steering Committee to develop the requests for proposals presented today. On November 16, 2015, the board appointed board members Leticia Perez and Scott Budnick as co-chairs of the Executive Steering Committee. And on April 14, 2016, the board approved the ESC membership and directed the ESC to oversee the development and release of the Proposition 47 RFP. The ESC membership roster can be found on attachment K2. The 18-member Executive Steering Committee convened for 6 days of in-person meetings and 1 teleconference meeting from June through October of this year to develop the RFP. A copy of the RFP can be found on attachment K1. Prior to developing the RFP, the Executive Steering Committee received briefings on substance use disorder, mental health, community engagement, restorative justice, reentry and housing. They were provided and considered reading materials on these same topics and listened and interacted with ESC members who led a formally incarcerated discussion panel. Through these discussions, reading materials, and briefings, the Executive Steering Committee agreed on the following key themes found in the request for proposal. Consistent with the legal requirements in Proposition 47 and Assembly Bill 1056, grant funds must be used for mental health services, substance use disorder treatment, diversion programs, or some combination thereof. In addition to these required services and programs, applicants are encouraged to provide supplemental housing-related services and other community-based support services. Eligible applicants are public agencies. Public agencies must partner with one or more non-governmental community organization in order to submit an application. Grant funds may not be used for programs or services provided in a custodial setting. The grant period is 38 months and covers June 16, 2017 through August 15, 2020, approximately 103 million will be available over the 38 months. Funding is categorized into 3 competitive categories. We wanted to highlight that the Proposition 47 ESC is structuring this grant differently from the county population-based Rubens that many other grants have used. For Proposition 47, the categories are small grant, large grant, and a category for Los Angeles County only. In the small category, public agencies may apply for up to 1 million for the entire 38-month grant period. In the large category, public agencies may apply for more than 1 million and up to 6 million for the entire 38-month grant period. The County of Los Angeles may submit a single application for up to 20 million for the entire 38-month grant period. Some further clarity there, only one application may be submitted on behalf of the County of Los Angeles and its subsidiary departments and agencies. Other cities and eligible non-county public entities within Los Angeles County may still submit individual applications in either the small or large category. A minimum of 50% of the total grant award must be passed through to one or more non-governmental community organizations, and a minimum of 5% of the total grant award must be set aside for data collection and evaluation efforts. Today, on behalf of the Executive Steering Committee, I am requesting that the board approve and release the Proposition 47 request for proposal as recommended by the Executive Steering Committee. This concludes my presentation, and I would like to invite our co-chairs, and Executive Director Howard to add any additional comments they may have.
Scott? Letitia's unable to be here, so you have to carry the water for the.
I just want to say that we have probably the most diverse ESC on the planet. It's been a fascinating process. Obviously, there's a lot of different views around this table on the different elements of Prop 47, but no matter what your view is, I can guarantee you with this RFP, once this money hits the streets, people will be better. And I wish it didn't take 2.5 years or however long it's been to actually get that mental health and substance abuse treatment to people who we all know need it very, very much. But hopefully there's enough resources here and it's going to the right place where we can actually see an effect. So I hope that happens, and I'm very grateful to my co-chair and everyone else on the CSC.
Madam Chair, Leticia, Supervisor Perez did send a comment. She wanted the board to hear from her. She said, as you all know, duty calls, and today I've been called upon to serve my county as a member of the jury pool. I'm truly bummed. I will not be with my favorite people in California. You know this is from her now, right? As we celebrate the unprecedented accomplishments of the Prop 47 team, it has been a grueling and enlightening process that has shaped my perspective in ways I could not have imagined or anticipated. Thank you to my co-chair and hero, Scotty B, and the passionate and consummate professionals of the BSCC. This is truly the best of us. Upward and onward, LP.
Great job, a great proposal, very thoughtful. The exploration of all the alternatives and evidence-based programs is terrific. I did have a question going back to our own experience in developing the Burnside proposal, and it has to do with the sort of the math. First of all, I don't know where the $103 million estimate came for, but that's an estimate of future revenues, I assume.
Yes.
My question is this. How many grants, if the math was done, will likely be supported by the time this rating process gets through? And it's a 3-year period, so these grants are locked in, and I gather that closes the door to other applicants for years 2 and years 3. And certainly the hope was that Prop 47 would be a kind of saturation effort that would make a big difference statewide. But really, this is just a question. Do we have a sense of how many counties or cities or grants will be supported by this wave?
I don't remember the exact number off of my head. We ran different specs, assuming folks apply for the maximum, but it's plus 20. It's more than that, but I don't remember the exact amount. But it's assuming folks were to apply for the match, we could do part of it.
Okay, I mean, so there's not even a round number.
What do you think over
plus 20.
Over 20.
Oh, I didn't, okay, I
Yeah,
was
over
over
20.
All right, okay, thank you.
And then, as Carter Levitt and Kate has said, this is a really unusual way for us to roll out funding at the BSCC. We've shifted the paradigm, and I think it was really tough. I was asking many of the same questions you were asking, and it does lock down the funding, but I'd force them to then reverse the math, and we would be funding similar number of grantees over that period of time, adding one year over year. So this is just gives grant awards individuals longer time to roll out their product with a larger dollar amount. So, I mean, we looked at it backwards and forward. I'll tell you, Letitia and Scott did great work. Scott's biggest fault is that he synthesizes things very fast and is very quick. And he waits for people to catch up and then explains to them why he knew this 20 minutes ago. I think he was super helpful to the process when I watched him in action. And or we could still
That
be.
ADHD, right?
Let's just say we have an ESC that loves to chat.
And a nice way of saying that is he synthesizes things very fast, and then he lets everybody else get to the conclusion. And I think that we needed that kind of leadership, because this was a gangly process with many alternatives that could have been considered. So I appreciate you and Letitia's leadership, and Ricardo has been doing this heavy lifting for some time.
Yes, he
so
has.
it's huge.
Thank you, Ricardo.
For a long time, all we ever said to each other was Prop 47. So, Katie, anything you want to add?
Just to mention the tremendous work of our team. I'm a little nervous to say names because I don't want to leave anybody out, but help me out, Ricardo. There were just tremendous heavy lifting, and I just want you all to hear these staff members' names.
Colleen Curtin, Eloisa, Patty, Daryl, Tim, all of our IT staff for all streaming all the meetings. Everything's available online also, by the way, from all the work that we've done. Our Deputy Director, Mary. Thank you, Aaron, for all the trouble that you kept us out of, and also to you, Kate.
And so we have had comment from the board. Is there any further comment from the board?
Just congratulations to everyone for this extraordinary job. This is exciting when this starts to roll out.
Thank you, Jen. We think so too. So nothing further from the board. Looking now for public comment, and I see one card being.
Erica, CJ.
Hello again, Erica Webster from the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice. I just want to echo what everyone is saying here and thank the co-chairs, the ESC, and the staff for the care and time that they took to craft what we believe is a very good RFP. I want to thank the BSCC for going through the effort of hosting all those regional meetings and taking the time to hear from the public about what was important to them. I think that was very impactful and what turned out to be a very new and precedent-setting process for this agency. So great work. We thank you for the trust given to a large, diverse ESC and its co-chairs. And we hope that the BSCC repeats this practice, not only in its other community grant programs, but in its construction funding as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nothing further, I'd reach the board for a motion.
Yes, so moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions for the record are Chief Brown, Chief Urtola.
That's it.
That's it. Thank you very much. Moving on now to item M. I'm sorry. L. I already circled
I would
it.
have been up there anyway, so that's okay.
Did we hear? Well, yes. Where they come?
Madam Chair, as our other board members are coming back in, I don't know if anybody's starting to get really hungry, we have sent out for sandwiches, and I expect they'll be here within 15 or 20 minutes, so we can take a really short break since you have several more agenda items.
Some evidence the sandwiches showed up. I got this one. Okay, all right.
So I have 5 minutes to say good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm Allison Ganter, Deputy Director with the Facility Standards and Operations Division and with the Research Division here at the board. And I'm here to ask for your approval of the final proposed revisions for the adult Title 15 and Title 24 minimum standards for local detention facilities, and also ask for approval to submit the final revisions to the Office of Administrative Law and the Building Standards Commission for final approval. Before beginning and some brief discussion, I'd like to thank Jeff Dean and Carlos Rojas for chairing and co-chairing this process. I know that they willingly jumped at the chance to participate. For that, we're very, very grateful. So you'll recall that you approved the draft proposed revisions at the June board meeting, and we are bringing those proposed revisions back to you with no changes. And in your packet, you'll find those revisions. As an aside, in that packet, it's not a complete packet of Title 15 and Title 24. It only includes those regulations where revisions were made. So if you're looking through those and you see some missing, that's why. And a few highlights included in the revisions include some more comprehensive requirements for suicide prevention programs, expanding on the requirements for policy and procedure, and also a requirement for health maintenance exams for individuals that are staying longer than 2 years in the facility. And you can review your attachment for all the other changes that were made. So after your approval of those revisions in June, we held a 45-day public comment period and also 3 statewide hearings to receive public comment. And a copy of the comments that were received are in your packet. And again, no changes were made to the draft proposals that you approved in June. So our next step is to take those revisions back to the Office of Administrative Law for final review. We anticipate that the effective date of the new regulations for Title 15 will be April of 2017. The Title 24 revisions, and those are the physical plant regulations, will take a little bit longer because the Building Standards Commission has a much longer cycle for their commission meetings, and we will keep you posted on the progress of the Title 24 final proposed regulations. So before closing, I wanted to acknowledge Leslie Heller and Ginger Wolf of the FSO division and the rest of the FSO team and the support team and everybody for coming together and getting these done. It takes a tremendous amount of work and time to put these regulation revisions together. I also really want to thank the 100+ participants in the work groups and executive steering committees and all the members of the public that took the time to comment on these very important minimum standards. So again, asking for approval to approve these final regulations and submit them to the Office of Administrative Law and the Building Standards Commission. And I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Anything from the board? Do we have any public comments?
No.
Looking to the board for a motion.
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Don't leave now.
Thank you.
Moving on now to M.
Great. I'm still Allison Ganter, Deputy Director for the Facility Standards and Operations Division. I am now asking for your approval to begin the regulation revision process for the juvenile Title 15 and Title 24 regulations. And that approval will include your directing staff to begin the planning process, appointing co-chairs, and also delegating authority to these co-chairs to establish to fill out the Executive Steering Committee membership. We're also requesting that you appoint as co-chairs Michelle Brown and David Steinhardt to the Executive Steering Committee. And upon approval of this process, staff will work with the co-chairs to identify executive steering committee members that are identified in your attachment M1, which is a draft document for ESC membership for your reference. And we intend to build a robust and diverse membership on this executive steering committee and expect that the co-chairs will have some discretion in filling out this slate. So the next steps will include putting a link on our website for persons to submit statements of interest to participate on the executive steering committee. Staff will then also conduct a statewide survey to garner any and all input on the regulation revisions. Any suggestions, we take them all. In the past, we've done this through a SurveyMonkey, an electronic way for people to submit their comments. But we will take comments anyway and anyhow. We'll take them written. You can send me an email and they'll get included in the process. Every piece of input that we receive is given to the executive steering committee for consideration at their meeting. And again, staff will work with the co-chairs to establish this executive steering committee and a draft timeline. So we anticipate that our first ESC meeting will be in March of in early 2017. And at that meeting, the executive steering committee will review all of the feedback that's submitted, identify critical issues for the process, and also determine how to proceed next. They will decide how work groups are formed, what subject matter areas they will be formed around, and how to proceed next with the revisions. And this will be a public meeting, and comments will be accepted at that meeting as well. And we hope, again, we haven't put together the timeline yet, but we're hoping that those work groups will meet in and around March of 2017. So those work groups, when they do meet, usually they are the body that propose revisions to the executive steering committee for approval based on the executive steering committee's direction. And exactly like the process we just closed for adult regulations, the BSCC board will have an opportunity to review the ESC approved revisions, and we'll begin another public comment period in accordance with the Administrative Procedures Act. So again, in closing, I'm asking for staff to begin the process, appointing Michelle Brown and David Steinhardt as co-chairs and delegating authority to the co-chairs to start filling out the executive steering committee membership.
Move approval.
Second. Hold the phone.
Jail. Before they can back out, you gotta get them.
Any public comment on this?
Yes. I would like to introduce Erica Webster from.
Nice to see you all again. I just wanted to support the choices of Michelle Brown and David Steinhardt as co-chairs for this ESC, and then to advocate that moving forward, the membership of the ESC and the working groups is very important to the outcome of these juvenile title regulations. And I hope that we can work with the ESC members and BSCC staff to make sure that the membership is inclusive, meaning that it includes people who have had direct experience with the juvenile justice system or have been incarcerated within their facilities, including formerly incarcerated people, their families, juvenile justice experts, and maybe most importantly, young people.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, back to the board. I believe we have a motion and a second. We want to hurry this because we don't want our co-chairs to go. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you to both David and Michelle for opting in to serve on this. Moving now to item N. Look, it's still Allison Ganter. I think by that name.
So for agenda item N, I am asking for approval for the draft application for the SB 1004 pilot program, and also asking that you delegate the authority for approval of these programs to staff. So the SB 1004 is a pilot project. SB 1004 describes a pilot project wherein the counties of Alameda, Butte, Napa, Nevada, and Santa Clara will be able to house and program certain young adults, persons 18 to 20 years old, in their juvenile detention facilities. And a strong driving force behind this program is research into adolescent brain development that recognizes that young adults might benefit from the programs that are offered to youth in juvenile detention facilities and prevent further involvement in the criminal justice system. And the BSCC has 2 roles in this pilot program that we'll talk about. This program is also referred to as the Deferred Entry of Judgment Pilot Program because the young people involved will waive the right to a trial and consent to participate in this program to defer entry of judgment. So our first role is to approve the named counties for participation in this pilot project based on their capacity, their ability to provide safety for all persons in the facility, so not only for the young adults that will be placed, but also for the juveniles that are in the facility as well. Their ability to provide programming and their ability to provide separation between adults and juveniles in accordance with federal law. And our second role is to conduct an evaluation of the program's effectiveness. So I'm going to focus on the approval process, and there's a draft copy in your packet for reference. And we will update the board as we move forward with the evaluation process as well. So as part of the background, 2 weeks ago, we had an all-day planning session with the affected counties. And these questions that you have in front of you for the draft application reflect our shared understanding of the BSCC's responsibility for approval. We had a great meeting with the county representatives and are really encouraged by the programs that are being proposed. We're also really heartened by the readiness of all the counties to provide adequate sight and sound separation for the young adults coming into the facility from the juveniles that are already going to be in the facility. All of the programs that are being proposed include providing evidence-based programs to these young people and are also committed to ensuring connection to community services upon their release. So we intend to use our authority to monitor compliance with the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Act and Title 15 as a guide for our approval of these programs. We intend to conduct site visits, review policy and procedures, and review the physical plant to make our determination, much like we would in a biennial inspection. So again, using Title 15 and JJDPA as a guide, we'll make a determination of the department's readiness to operate this program. And we have 30 days from receipt of the county's application to make that approval or denial of the program. We intend to release the application on January 1st of next year, which is the effective date of this piece of legislation. And again, we intend to keep you all approved of our progress towards approval. We'll have an update for you at the February meeting. And again, asking for your approval for the draft application for the SB 1004 pilot programs, and also that you delegate authority for approval of these programs to the BSCC staff. Happy to take any questions that you may have.
To the board for comments, questions?
I have one suggestion, Allison, sorry. Within the bill, it states that each county to establish a multidisciplinary team consisting of representatives of specified local entities. Do you want to include that in the application of list of the counties that have to list who those people are, and what agencies they come from?
We certainly could. It's not part of the mandated requirements for us to include in our review for approval. I mean, that's incumbent on the counties to provide that, but it would make sense to have a copy of that in their plan moving forward.
Okay.
And Mike is, of course, one of the pilot counties, Nevada County. So this is a significant new step because it's a new proposal to house adult prisoners in juvenile facilities in the 5 pilot counties, and then to measure how that has worked out. This bill did not have an easy ride through the legislature. It was controversial in several respects because there were issues raised about the programming that would be available to adults as well as juveniles and the safety factors that have been described. And I was, I guess, one of the difficult people that pushed for the amendment requiring BSCC to certify the facilities as to safety and programming for the mixed population. And we were drawing from a model that is not new, and that's the 208.5 certification process for juvenile facilities that house the older, house adults in the wake of realignment. So, I mean, this is fine, and I think staff is prepared to do a good job of this. But I was not really completely happy with the 4 points in the template. I really thought that given the experiment that we're putting out here now in the pilot programs, that it needed more. For example, no questions asked about how many adults would be put in these juvenile facilities, and nothing specific about the staffing changes that might be needed to serve the two populations. So, I'm not asking to send this back to the drawing board, but I have a kind of a proposal, which is that we could adopt this template as a starting point or as a general guide. But I would ask that the staff come to the Juvenile Justice Standing Committee and ask for further input on the kinds of criteria that ought to go into a BSCC certification and approval process, just as a kind of a backup step to make sure that we're covering the bases, providing the adequate level of safety and protection and the adequate level of programming. So without trying to wordsmith and rewrite this whole thing now, I would ask the sort of flexibility to perhaps add to this in the context of discussion with our committee.
Well, let me say this is not a new phenomenon. There have been over the years, when I was a sitting chief, events where young people were housed in adult facilities, and the regs were designed to protect the sight and sound piece of this. I think the agency has experience in doing just that. I think that they'll be held to that standard that they have invoked prior to this. So in terms of elongating the process, going to the standing committee, I don't have much heartburn with that, but I do think the regulations and the application of those has been handled by staff in the past and can continue to do that. I think being open to discussion and appearing before that standing committee is fine, but we need to move the item forward.
And certainly, when we're reviewing the physical plan for the county's readiness to proceed, we'll know and note in our response where the young people are going to be housed, how they're going to accomplish sight and sound separation. And we'll be able to, in our response, be able to provide that information, back to the county. Unit B, 10 beds are designated as the SB 1004 pilot program. We'll certainly have that information, and we can include it in the application response.
I would ask that actually comes back before this board. I think this is an important a report out or a review of what's going on. I will tell you, deferred entry of judgment is nothing new and has been in statute for juveniles for some very long time. And then if you follow philosophically the evolution of the brain and young people, doing things not making much sense and acting out, you reckon with the fact that 18 to 24-year-old, and actually I would say 18 to 26-year-old, continue to make bad decisions. And this effort to me is to continue what juvenile services has already been doing, which is wrapping their arms around young people and trying to keep them out of a system where they turn 18 to 19 overnight and find themselves in a world of hurt. So I had the same reaction you did initially in terms of liability and concern for that, but this agency is, this isn't new. It's new because this is a pilot program and they're using juvenile space. But I also would like to say that there are adults currently being housed in juvenile facilities, and it's not uncommon across the state where we have that occur because they were under 18 before they committed the crime. So the phenomenon is has been out there and operating for some time. So I don't want to push Allison's division into elongating a process where you have 5 counties ready to go. I have a lot of confidence in our regs.
Well, the bill's effective 1/1/17, and we meet on November 30th. So I'm still not completely satisfied with what I think are bare bones criteria, and I would just like to ask the approval of our group to have some input into this, since they're the subject matter experts. I don't think it does any harm. I don't think it slows anything down. I think it helps the process work better. So I don't see what's wrong with asking for that.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I'm not
Can you
either.
clarify what you're asking? What you don't want us to vote on?
Okay, let me put it in specifics. We're being asked to approve this template as the criteria for applying. And I'm suggesting that there's some things missing. So I'm suggesting that we go ahead and approve this template, subject to recommendations for modifications that the staff would accept as recommended by the Juvenile Justice Standing Committee. And it would be in the discretion of the staff to accept them or not. It's an input process.
Sure.
I mean, the board itself is not, this regulatory change or this effort may have never needed to come before this board. Our staff can do that. So I don't see that as being anything that we elongate. We don't have to wait for the next meeting to move forward, if that's all you're asking. I wasn't very clear on. Can we
All right,
approve
let me just
this?
make this easy.
Okay, can we approve
I
this
would-
and have it
I-
come to your body for final consideration and then staff move
That would be
forward?
fine. I mean, that's all I'm asking for.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
I have a question. Just to clarify now, because I'm confused. When this is completed and they've submitted their plans for these individual counties, what's the process after that then? Is
So
that
we're-
approved by staff or does it come back here or what is that?
If you choose to delegate that authority to us, we would, as staff, give them approval. There's a requirement for collecting data and doing evaluation, but there's no additional requirement for reporting back to the board, which certainly we would, just to keep you posted on the process, but there's no formal next step outside of staff approving the process of the evaluation.
So unlike an RFP process, the staff are just looking for them to have to submit a plan since they're already named as recipients.
Correct.
And then you would just go ahead and move forward with it.
Yeah, and a couple things happen with respect to the federal law and holding adults in juvenile detention facilities. They become a new type of facility according to federal law, what's called a co-located facility. And so in addition to receiving a biennial inspection, they'll also have to receive an additional inspection. So they'll be reviewed every year that they are one of these pilot program counties and they become a co-located facility. So I guess the responsibility falls more on staff for making sure that we meet all of the compliance monitoring requirements for the federal JJDPA.
Thank you. I know there's going to be some others that we're watching this in terms of seeing how the creativity and programs that are developed to see if, there is some ability to replicate or if there's a model program out of this or, something that can be done elsewhere. And some of the maybe barriers and hurdles that some of these counties will have to overcome in order to accomplish this. So I'm just interested in seeing what they come up with later.
Sure. And the counties were, and Chief Bertola can speak to this as well. It was a really great, it was an all-day planning session, information sharing session. The counties are really interested in meeting regularly to kind of collaborate on these programs and have shared experiences and be able to do just that if it's something that other counties end up being interested in, and it does show success.
Can I ask a question now about this? Just about the law, Chief Penner, David, who are the youth? Are these youth that would be going to CDC? Are these youth that would be going to DJJ? Who are the youth that are being?
It would be, they'd really be doing local time, what we used to call local time. They could be deferred. And so there's, the court can make an order when an individual comes in front of them to give them DEJ is what we call it. And this would just extend that to the 18.
But if this law didn't exist, where would these, are we talking about 707 offenses? Where would they be going?
No.
They go to county.
They would be in the adult system.
So we go to county jail.
It's an alternative to county jail.
Thank you.
But just for clarification, they'll still be in the adult system, just housed in the juvenile hall in a co-located separate pod from the youth,
Supervised by probation staff.
supervised by probation JCOs.
Yeah, good question. So it's, there is some really good news incorporated in this, I think. It helps more services at that body of young people. Sheriff Grogan has an interesting question. Does Chief Bertola need to recuse himself? Abstain?
Yeah, I've asked Chief Rotola to abstain from voting on the item because it doesn't involve the creation of contract or grant making. He's allowed to be here for the discussion purposes. But I've asked him to abstain from the vote.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and let me just close on what I requested, because I see this actually as easy. So I'm going to vote to approve the template, and we'll just review it and make suggestions at the committee level to staff on how to make it work, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, public comment on this matter. Seeing none, back to the board, I need a motion and a second.
Eric, I'm so disappointed.
This is good. A motion and a second?
Motion.
First.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
Chief Rotola abstains. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to item O.
Can we back up just for a second, Madam Chair? I think we've got the understanding of how the template's going to be created. Can we do a separate motion to delegate to staff of the final approval process?
Delegate.
When the applications come in, there'll be 30 days for the board to approve them. So we would,
Delegate that to the staff.
we would ask
Yes.
this body to delegate to staff the ability to approve once the template is final.
Is that in the form of a motion, or do I need a motion?
I thought that was in the staff recommendation that we just approved. Was it not?
It wasn't the staff recommendation, but we had a different discussion about the intervention of
But
JPSC.
at the end of the day, he said I approve it.
I
as it
backed
stands.
down.
Oh, I see. Then we're fine. Then we're fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Thank you for trying to catch us. Mr. Steinhardt was ahead of you. Moving on now, and here we have Tim.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm Timothy Vlasic. I am a new field rep with the BSCC Division of Corrections Planning and Programs, and I am presenting agenda item O. This item is a request for board approval of proposed executive steering.
Excuse me for just a minute. Council, we have a number of people that may be interested in applying for these funds. Have you made a determination if it is a recusal or an abstention?
This item, it's interesting, and this is a creation of the ESC, and that's it. So we're not discussing really the development of any application or proposal. I would say.
So I don't have to get out?
You don't, certainly, Judge, you certainly don't have to get out. The question is the creation of the executive steering committee enough of a start of the grant-making process where we would want recusal from the members who might be impacted? In this case, I would generally say no. However, since we have enough people here, and I see Jeff Dean running to the door right now.
That guy Dean applies for everything.
Strangely enough, out of an overabundance of caution, we could have Chief Rotola, Sheriff Dean, Sheriff Brown, and Chief Brown, Chief Bergerano is retiring.
Okay.
You're fine.
Can community-based organizations apply for this?
I don't believe community-based organizations are eligible for this.
Then I will stay.
Then you shall stay. Chief Brown, you're good.
This is exempt now.
The board itself is not exempt. The executive steering committee that will develop the recommendations are exempt from those provisions.
Sure. Rotola.
There you go.
Thank God we have Francine.
Thank you, Francine.
Okay, I
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this agenda item is a request for board approval of the proposed executive steering committee for the Burn JAG federal grant program. Within this item, staff recommends the board take two actions. The first is to approve the proposed JAG ESC and delegate authority to JAG ESC Chair Linda Penner to modify the ESC membership if needed. The second is to task this ESC to review the current JAG state strategy, to develop an RFP for the next JAG cycle beginning January 1, 2018, consistent with the proposed timeline, which is in your materials, and also to develop award recommendations for the board. Included in your materials are also attachment 01, which is a copy of the proposed BSC roster, and also attachment 02, which is a copy of the current JAG state strategy. I also want to point out that since these documents were published, we did have a change. You should have received an updated copy this morning. The change is that the sheriff from Butte County has sent an apology and asked to have it being rescinded due to a scheduling conflict. However, Kings County Sheriff David Robinson has asked to be considered instead. So that should be on your new draft BSC membership roster. And then also we had 2 subject matter experts come forward that staff recommend for consideration. The first is Cindy Burgess, who is a mental health service provider, works for San Joaquin County Department of Mental Health, and we would like her to be considered for the position of subject matter expert as a mental health expert. And then David Fernandez, who works with the CDCR as a special service agent, and he would be a subject matter expert on statewide gang activity. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any public comment at this juncture?
Nope. None.
Looking for a motion and a second to approve the ESC, and the chair can modify it as needed, and to review the current JAG strategy, develop an RFP consistent with that, and develop recommendations.
I'll move that. Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Let the record reflect that out of the room during this entire discussion were Chief Bertola, Sheriff Dean,
And
Sheriff
Brown.
That's all, right? And we can invite them back in, please. These guys have got the most exercise. They're workout fees. They don't get their exercise here.
Okay.
Now we're on to item B, where an opportunity for any members of the public to come forward and make comments. And of course, we have limited that in this piece of the agenda to 3 minutes. Do we have any public comments? Closing? Nope. Seeing none, I'd like to adjourn this meeting and thank everyone for all the hard work that went into this work. Thank you very much.
And we have sandwiches.
More importantly, can you get us on an earlier flight?